Welcome everyone for joining us for our talk. Today we have Evelyn Smith who will talk about her holistic approach on hair and she's going to talk about her journey. But before we start, she's going to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself. How you
Hi,
doing today?
Jeanette. I'm doing well today. Thank you. I hope you're well as also. You look great. Well, you know me essentially from Toastmasters and Toast of Rockdale, our club. And I'm a retired educator who moved to Georgia in 2014 after I retired, seeking the warm of the South. So I came from North Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and also to be closer to my family. I was actually born here in Georgia, and most of my siblings are here in the South, and I have tons of cousins. And that's essentially, I believe, what you need to know. I'm a senior. You probably know that as well, but I have two grown children, a son and a daughter, who still live up north. I can't wait till I can go see them when this pandemic is over. It's been a year since I've laid my eyes on them or my hands on them. I see them like this.
Virtually.
Yeah, virtually every once in a while, and still not as often as I would like.
You used to be a teacher, right?
Yes,
And
I'm tired.
a retired teacher. So I wanted to talk about, workplace with your hair and growing up, what did you experience in your journey with your hair?
Well, if we start with my childhood, I was what was called a tender headed child,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that I had a tender scalp. My mother would comb and brush and plait mine and braid my hair, and I would scream and squinch, and she smacked me with the brush on top of my head. Be still. But it hurt just for her to comb it. She was heavy-handed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
she did not she didn't have not have a lot of patience overall, and certainly not with my hair, which was my hair has always been rather thin and not the tight curl that you might associate with a lot of African American type hair, but more kinky, what I call kinky. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not a curl, it's got bends in it.
Yeah.
And I basically went through my mom's period of carrying my hair probably until I was about maybe 12, that she would grease my scalp, comb out my hair, braid it up. When I was little, we'd go to church. When I say little, this is probably up until I was about age 7 or so, because my mom became disabled and couldn't. But anyway, and so she put bows on. I remember having little satin ribbons in my hair and these little braids that were probably no longer than about that sticking out on the side, no more than about 6 inches or so. My hair never grew very long, except when I was in high school. I dyed my hair for the first time.
But
And
how was that experience?
well, I started out dyeing it red. I think I was red for one day because it came out this tinny red that I was like, I didn't like. And the next day I dyed it black.
Right.
And when I dyed it black, my hair grew longer than it had ever been. And that was in my senior year. And I actually took my senior graduation pictures with hair that was styled at that time. We used to get magazines like Ingenue, was it 17
Yeah, I remember
magazine, which would,
17.
I'm sorry.
I remember 17 magazine.
Right. You probably don't remember Ingenue, but when I was a young girl, and we're talking over 60 years ago, there was a magazine Ingenue. But in any case, similar to 17, it had these pictures, hairstyles in it. McCall's magazine would also, uh, these magazines were marketed to white
Yeah.
women and girls. They were not intended for us. There was never any black models in there or black hairstyles per se. So essentially, what would happen is young black women would get their hair pressed,
Yes.
not even permed at that time. For the most part, I did. The only time I knew about a perm, I'd hear my white classmates talk about perming their hair. because they had straight hair. They wanted it curly. They'd get these perms and put them on these pink curlers, these hard pink curlers, so their hair could be curly in some way. So I didn't know anything about perms. I used to go to the hairdresser in my neighborhood in between, let's say, high school and when I went away to college, probably junior high school. I really enjoyed the experience of going to the hairdresser. The best part about it was having someone wash your hair,
Yeah.
laying your head back and then massaging your scalp. That's a feeling that I've never experienced anywhere else except for in the salon.
Yeah, the massaging part of the scalp is most people tend to enjoy that.
Absolutely. That's a really, really good feeling to have somebody's hands in your head and massaging your scalp, and then the running water, which would be great. But the hot comb pressing and curling irons, that wasn't always fun. I often get nicked on the ear with the hot curling, have that little burn spot, or in the back of the neck with the pressing comb.
And
And everybody would know, well, you got your hair pressed, you must have winced because you got teeth marks on the back of your neck. But when I get to college in the 70s, actually in 69, I start wearing an afro. And I
70s
never had,
were the time where people wear the afro and the movement and celebrating the blackness.
absolutely, from probably mid 60s on, that is certainly the case. Black and I'm proud, fists and all that, and the afros, Angela Davis. I never had an Angela Davis afro because I never had that kind of hair. But I did have a small afro, and I wore my hair natural throughout my college years. I believe the first time I get a perm, I am an adult, and that probably was in the late 70s. I was actually dating a hairdresser.
Oh.
Yeah, he permed my hair for the first time.
What made you decide to relax your hair?
Well, that's essentially what he did. in his shop, in his shop, women came there to get their hair permed. And I had an afro. I was dating him. It wasn't going to cost me anything because I was dating him. And so he permed my hair. And I probably wore it that way, not very long. I don't even think it was a year, but maybe a year. And that was in the mid to late 70s. I think.
After wearing your hair relaxed and to this time, what happened in between?
Well, and I had when I went back to wearing my hair natural after coming home from college, and I entered the workforce. I had several haircuts. I always kept it relatively short. Like I said, I never had a Angela Davis type haircut, but I've had I think one they called the Gumby, went like this to one side.
Wow. I don't remember that, but I'm sure.
Yeah, they're I think they called it the Gumby, and I remember when I lived in New York. In fact, I was on the train one day and some young man referred to me as Grace Jones because the way it was cut that time, it was kind of a variation on the Gumby, but more straight. And I don't know if you know Grace Jones, and
Yes,
very
straight up.
angular. Yeah, very angular. So I had that kind of haircut. I was in my 50s. I know that, and maybe even a little younger. I started locking my hair. So I
Mm.
had dreadlocks. I remember my graduation picture when I finished my master's degree. I have an afro. I have an afro then, but shortly after that, because I had a girlfriend in my class who had dreads, and she basically guided me on how to start my dreads. And so I started wearing dreads, and I wore dreads, and they came as a little twist. So my hair was short, and then I had dreads that just below my shoulders until I moved back to Pennsylvania. However, that was a very stressful situation, and my hair, I started to notice that my hair was falling out. Started noticing that my hair was thinning and my locks were falling out, primarily in the top and on the side. And initially, I thought since my hair had gotten so long that it was the weight of the locks. It was about as long as yours.
Okay.
And I thought that it was the weight of the locks and perhaps some of the tension. I was going to a loctician, as a matter of fact, and that maybe they were being twisted too tight. So I switched up and I kind of started taking care of them more myself. And I went to a barber, a female barber, and I had her kind of cut them a little bit, just cut them shorter so that I figured that would loosen up the tension some, the weight. And it did. It continued.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I realized that I actually had bald spots in my hair, where my locks had fallen out, but my hair essentially had fallen out. And I had bald spots in my hair here. I still have a very smooth spot here, and here on the top of my head, up here,
Mm-hmm.
here. I mean, if you felt my hair, if you were washing my hair, you would feel where my hair, or my scalp rather, is as smooth as the face of your phone, because there's no hair that grows there. I ended up going to a dermatologist, and the dermatologist told me that I had alopecia. She prescribed, at that time, you had to have a prescription, Rogaine, I think is the name of it,
Yes.
that's supposed to grow your hair, right?
Yes.
You
Rogaine.
described this topical Rogaine to put on my head. I think I must have used Rogaine for a couple of weeks, and I found that Rogaine was causing me, I had the sensation that there was something weird going on in my head, inside my head, like in my brain.
Wow.
I found out that it was a hormone. Rogaine is built, I think, out of animal hormones of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would just get these weird sensations, and I said, "Oh no, what's different?" It was this Rogaine, and so I stopped using that. So now I'm back to actually cutting my locks off. I actually still have them. I have the locks in a bag when I cut them off, and I go back to a small afro at first, but then I can't maintain a small afro without having these holes in my head, these
Uh,
holes, spots, indentations in the hair. And so I go to another barber and I tell him, take it down, take it all the way down. Well, like I said, my hair has always been kinky. So it's not the kind of hair that would lay flat. It sticks straight up from the root.
got it.
It sticks straight up. But he took it down, and I tried to brush it to lay down. It wouldn't lay down because it was just, just not that type of
Curly
hair.
and kinky.
Yeah, it wasn't that type of hair.
So if I remember you saying you went from wearing your hair to the natural stage, going to the relaxer and back into the locks now, wearing your hair in a shortcut.
Yes.
So and to that you start seeing your hair thinning when you get into your mid 50s.
Yes.
And you went to the dermatologist, all they could tell you you had alopecia, and really not really explaining to you what was going on with your
Uh,
hair or what caused the alopecia.
oh no, there were no. She talked about. I believe she did talk about stress as being a partial, but she also mentioned that it could be genetic. And actually, I've come to the conclusion that it is genetic. I remember my mother, my aunts, all wore wigs, and they probably wore wigs like in their 40s and 50s. They didn't always wear wigs, but as when I was growing up, they were primarily pressing their hair. In fact, one of my aunts used to
Mhm.
press my hair in the kitchen. That's one of the things she do. She'd press and curl my hair with the hot iron on the stove. But later she started wearing a wig. And my mother started wearing a wig, and her other sister started wearing. I had two sisters, two aunts on my mother's side that lived very close to us in Philadelphia. As I got older, I came to realize that they were wearing those wigs because their hair had thin. Because they used to have beautiful heads of hair. And as far as I know, neither the one of them ever had a permanent. So did the hot pressing cause it? I don't know. But I basically believe it's hereditary. And I don't have uncles, to say definitively that they went bald because I never had uncles. I've only had my mom had sisters that I knew. Her brothers had passed on
Mhm.
even before I was born. Oh, I'm sorry. And my father always had his hair.
Oh, okay. But your mother was also struggling with having hair, and she also wear wigs.
Yes.
Got it. Interesting. So having to go to that transition, and I see now you wearing your hair bald. How was it going through that transition, deciding to cut all your hair and just not wear any hair? How was it?
Well, as I said, this primary hair thinning began in my 50s. At the same time, or roughly around the time, I'm also starting menopause. I wore wigs for a while, but one of the things I found, particularly in the summer, even in the north, it was too hot up under a wig. I was like, this is too much. I can't take it. Right?
Mm,
And so when I was at this barber, the last barber that I went to, and he took my hair all the way down and he cut it so low at my request that I looked at it and said to myself, I actually said to him, gee, I may as well be bald. And he said, why not? And I looked at him and I was like, bald? Mm, I don't know about that. And he said to me, you could do that, of course, but you've got to own it.
that was a great advice.
Yeah. And I went back and asked the guy I was dating at that time, what would you think if I cut all my hair off, shaved it off, and went bald? He's like, whatever you want to do with it, it's okay with me. I was like, okay, well, let's try it. So I did. He helped me shave it the first time I shaved, in the back. I wasn't used to using a razor. He helped me shave it. And then I got some advice from some other men that I knew who shaved their head. I was advised to use peroxide, not witch hazel, to keep bumps down on my head. My brother, I have a brother who also gave me some advice and helped me shave my head, particularly when I moved here. I started shaving my head and never turned back.
Mhm.
I
So
love it. It's so freeing.
I know. So what was the you were working at the time, or were you retired by then?
When I first shaved my head,
Yes.
I shaved it I was still teaching school at a predominantly white school. I was the only Black teacher there and had been pretty much for the first, I was the only Black teacher in this school for the first 8 of the 13 years I worked there. And
How
I
was
went
that
to work,
experience
oh,
with
well, they saw me transition because I was, like I said, I was hired, I had dreadlocks. Then I went to a short afro and my hair was like falling out and spotty. There's one picture that I hate, absolutely hate, that's in one of the yearbooks because my hair is so just inconsistent throughout. And at that time I hadn't gone bald. And it may have been after I was wearing the wigs. I was out one day with the children at recess and I got on the swing with this wig on. I go up and down, up and down. And I like to swing hard and high. I go up, the wig comes off, goes that way. I go this way. This kid standing out there, Miss Smith, you lost your hair. And so, like, from those types of incidents, I was like, this is not going to work for me.
I know.
This wig thing is not going to work for me. But I probably had worn wigs for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. I remember coming in one time with it blonde. I had a blonde wig. And the teachers looked at me, all these white women, they all looked at me. But I would do my thing anyway. I didn't care what they thought, really. I just be myself, right? And so over the summer, it was over the summer when I decided to shave it
Mhm.
off. So I came back in August or September, whenever school started that year, and I was bald. And I got stares again. Like, hey, how y'all doing?
but
Done with the
but one of
school?
the thing is you own it and you felt comfortable in your skin wearing it bald. So that was the biggest thing.
Yes, absolutely. And I still do.
Awesome. And I see sometimes you wear a different scarf to spice it up.
I'll tell you, one reason one reason I cover my head for the most part is because it's cold. My head gets cold. I don't necessarily want to cover my head, but I have a lot of hats because I've got to have my head covered in the winter. And when I am, feeling, I guess, more toward or leaning more towards an Afrocentric look, I'll wrap it in a gele or some other type of head wrap because, like I said, for the most part, it's because my head is cold.
That's nice.
Hmm.
But thank you for sharing your experience with your hair. It was very interesting and learning all the stage of your hair, and it was fun listening to you. And thank you
Well,
again.
great talking to you, Jeanette. Thank you. I hope that you and other women find this information interesting and useful.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.